Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide. Profits are made and relationships are forged. I'm your host, Rebecca Monet, the CEO and Chief Scientist at Zorka Profiles, along with Tracy Kawa, the founder of Kawa Community Partners and Master Trainer for Zorka Profiles. Tracy is a community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur. And of course, our delightful guest today is Teresa Wade. Teresa is an accomplished singer-songwriter turned award-winning sustainability advocate and business advisor. As an entrepreneur, songbird, and solution finder, she's created meaningful success in golf, franchising, nonprofit, sustainability, and music industries. And it's not hyperbole when she received international recognition for it. Teresa has been described as a talented, tenacious, and magnanimous, how do you say that word, girls?
Magnanimous.
Outrageous woman who says that the secret to her plethora of triumphs is to know the joy of doing what you love. And what she loves, of course, is entrepreneurship. And it all started with chickens. I got to know this story about the chickens. So tell us how your world of entrepreneurship started with chickens.
Oh, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Tracy and Rebecca, for having me today. And I'm delighted to share my story about entrepreneurship, the chapters in my life that have allowed me to apply that passion for purpose and also profitability from a business perspective. And I think all that began for me about the age of 4 or 5 in Stone Mountain, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. My parents both came from large families and were self-made business successes themselves and wanted me to learn about commerce and being a small business owner from the get-go. And so on our little 5 acres, I got a pony when I was 3. We had a few goats, a few cows, and we had chickens. And the purpose of the chickens was certainly for me to experience the Little House on the Prairie that I was growing up and watching on television, but also to teach me about commerce. And the way that rolled was that we had a house full of hens, and every week I would collect the eggs and I sold them to a couple of ladies in my church, and my mom marched me to the bank to open a bank account. And that was my first business, was selling eggs. So I talk to people and say, my entrepreneurship started with chickens.
I love it. Entrepreneurship at age 4 and 2 wonderful role models with your parents to teach you at a very young age how to build a business, how to put money away, all of those things that are important. So we are so delighted to have you today. So earlier, Tracy, maybe you can get into the song that we got to listen to right before the show and how it moved you. And then, of course, I want to know the whole story behind it.
Yeah, last time when we were speaking, we had a pre-conversation with Teresa, and she was just sharing her amazing background. She has so many varied interests, and one of her passions is music. And she has been a celebrity. She's been a singer in Nashville, everything from writing the song to singing it, to producing it, even to marketing it, just the full spectrum, the turnkey. And I got so curious. I'm like, who is this woman who has this golden touch? And I YouTubed her. I YouTubed you, Teresa, and I found this incredible album and this song, Sometimes Roses Bloom, you know, talking all about the underdog, right? How sometimes we're the wind underneath somebody else's wing. And it just was it's such a great song that I have goosebumps talking about the song, let alone the tears that it brought to my eyes, hearing it. So thank you for such a beautiful spirit that was able to create such beautiful music. But tell us a little bit about your past in singing and songwriting and just this amazing skill and talent that you have?
Well, I think I was definitely born with music in my blood. And I started playing the piano at age 5 and studied classical piano for about 12 years. And during that time, I was, I've been on stage since I was 5, I guess, every year in competitions. And I grew up singing in church, and that was a really big part of my life. And certainly I've mentioned my mom and her being such an inspiration and a support, but also look back at particularly my best friend all growing up. She passed in an early age in her 20s, but I remember her nudging me one of the first times I ever got on stage to sing at a youth camp. And, she was a lot of the wind beneath my wings. And I've had a lot of that in my life. And I've been grateful for that because, everybody can't be in the sunshine all the time, and more people are in the shade than they are in the spotlight. So this song, Sometimes Roses Bloom in the Shade, talks about the story of Ray Charles, also the class and dignity that Jackie O displayed during her role and her example. And I wrote that song with a gentleman in Nashville, Don Poitras. And when I listen back to songs that I've written in my past, I get goosebumps, and I am totally taken aback to the moment when those songs came out, and we sit down and talk about the ideas and how it has affected us and how it could affect someone else, because that's the whole purpose, going back to passion with purpose, of writing the music, is being able to create something that can resonate with the listener, that the resonate can either be moved by, inspired by, relate to in a moment of sorrow or sadness, or to get excited about when they are also, on a high and experiencing happiness and joy. And music is such a gift. And I went through high school and studied interior design actually at the University of Georgia. And then I became Miss DeKalb County in 1993. I probably shouldn't say the year at this point, but when I was Miss DeKalb County, part of the Miss America system is being able to speak in public and talk about a platform that may be near and dear to your heart. And so at the time, I had created a program about parents active in children's education that I won the state award for at the Miss Georgia pageant. But in speaking with folks, I would always lead with a song. And I always found that the music would open the door and get people's attention so that you would then be able to have a receptive audience to hear the message that you wanted to share. And so I was really moved as much by how people responded to my music than maybe how the people were moved by my music. And at that point, it really started to click with me that, wow, my music can make a difference and it can be a powerful influence of change. And so at that point, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And I had played the piano, but I didn't play the guitar, and I had never written a song before. And I moved to Nashville, learned how to do all of that, got a writing deal with Charlie Daniels Music Publishing, and went on to have another writing deal, and kind of survived and made my way, and decided to be a pioneer and buck the system and make my own record and raise the money and write it and produce it and distribute it, and toured the Southeast and the secondary markets, and just loved it, had a blast. And again, was able to use my gifts and, put a smile on somebody's face or bring a tear to their eye. And that's what our gifts are for, is we're supposed to use them in a way that we can affect others.
Music really is a common language. It kind of pierces through a million things and goes straight to the heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just listening to music can have us open up and be receptive to another way of looking at things, or understanding what someone else has gone through. And this seems to be a theme in your life, is this compassion, this empathy, this ability to see what others are going through in much of your work. And I'm wondering if I could pivot just a little bit from this part of you that understands the human heart, and talk a little bit about the Hopes of the Warrior program that you're involved in, and what that's about and what your role is there.
Yes, absolutely. So I just recently got back a couple days ago from the Hope for the Warriors Invitational, which is an annual event Hope for the Warriors is a national organization that's been around for 15 years, and they help support not only service members, but their families through recovery and through transition and placement of how to, engage in normal life again, or try to engage in normal life. And I got invited to participate in this event because I'm a golfer. I love to play golf. I'm pretty competitive, and also as a singer, oftentimes I get invited to participate in events like this, to play golf, play music, rally support, and with Hope for the Warriors, I get to meet a lot of our service members, get to know their story. And in the last 7 or 8 years that I've been involved, one piece that I never knew going in would come out of it was my dad was a World War II Navy veteran, and he passed 21 years ago, but he came out of an era in which those experiences were not talked about, and those veterans were not acknowledged and appreciated and celebrated. And so I never knew as a kid what my dad's experience was as a service person. So although I never had one word about the Navy exchanged between my dad and I have one photo of him in a Navy uniform, I now have such a different understanding and a different appreciation for the sacrifice and the courage and the bravery that our service members have in allowing us to have the freedom to be entrepreneurs and to do podcasts like we're recording today. So Hope for the Warriors is an amazing organization that I'm proud to be part of, and I'm glad to do everything I can to support those efforts.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is a different generation, isn't it? Your father and my uncle went through similar, so they served in the same war. And I don't remember him ever talking about these things. And there are wounds, psychological wounds, and friends that they lost, the sacrifice that they made for our freedoms. And like you said, for the ability to live the American dream, to be an entrepreneur, to express our God-given talents. We are endlessly in debt to our servicemen and women. So.
Sure. And I think that's just a generational thing,
so
meaning
too.
that there were so many things that haven't been spoken about in the past that today we speak freely about and we take it for granted, right? But years ago, there were just so many subjects that were just swept under a carpet or left behind a closed door. So, but today we get to honor, right? Like you said, we get to honor the servicemen. So that's really a great thing.
So I want to hear more, Teresa, about your entrepreneurial journey. You got all these talents. Tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. So what started out with chickens, and where did it progress to? Tell us more about that.
It's funny because when you're going through different chapters in life, rarely does this day and age, does someone work for the same company for more than 10 years, right? Which is very common, but I never really had it. I've never worked for anybody except for about 6 months in my whole life. I've always done my own thing. And so when I moved to Nashville to pursue a music career, my degree was interior design, but I knew about small business ownership because my parents were small business owners. And that drive and that work ethic was just in me from the beginning. And that's all I knew, was just go and succeed. And when it succeeds, it's on you. When it fails, it's on you. And also showed quarter horses growing up, which I think is a great piece to teach kids responsibility of especially large animals, but taking care of animals along the way. Again, it's where it all started with chickens. But when I moved to Nashville, I was the product. I was the marketer, the promoter, the everything for me, because I was the product, selling myself, my personality, all those things in association with my music, to open doors, to get co-writing appointments, to get publishing deals, to get on to, talk myself onto a stage, all of those pieces. But I never really had those formal tools, but I did that for 15 years. And I was a little ahead of the curve on some of the technology pieces and kind of been there, done that, so to speak, and wanted to take on another challenge. So I went back to graduate school and got an MBA. And to tell you the truth, I was petrified when I went back to grad school because it had been so long since my undergrad. And I knew all these other people were coming in with all this corporate experience. Well, in the end, I turned out to be the one with the most advantages because I had already been running a business all those years. So once I got my MBA, it was like the light bulb went on, and I then had formal tools in a toolkit, right, to run a business. I'd been figuring all that out on my own all that time, and had gotten by and done okay. Well, at that point, I was just inspired and on fire to go pioneer something different. And so I had gotten really interested in the field of sustainability and corporate sustainability, and not just environmental stewardship, but how those pieces affect community sustainability and the culture of people. And then, of course, the economic benefits associated with being sustainable with your people, your resources, and the way that you do business. And because of my love for golf, I left Nashville and moved to Hilton Head Island and started a nonprofit organization called Experience Green, where we promoted community sustainability, and I developed some programming specific to golf, specific to the golf industry, and to elevate some things that golf was already doing well, but also draw attention and start making a difference in ways that golf wasn't doing so well. And so I ended up getting an international certification for the PGA Tour event there on Hilton Head. We rallied and did a community program with 20 plus golf courses in the area. I brought in RBC as my major partner that helped fund all of our programming. We offered national symposiums. Then I became a speaker in the golf world on this topic, and then won an international award for that community sustainability piece. And so that was just another entrepreneur piece, part of my journey that I guess kind of pioneered a piece. And then at that point, I made some changes in my personal life. And at that point, I was looking for something different. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and a girlfriend of mine had recently invested in a franchise. And she said, you should do that. You might want to check into what's out there. And when I started looking around, I realized, wow, this is a really great bridge and a great platform for people that have a desire and a passion to be business owners, but not necessarily certain of how to go about it, and certainly don't want to spend as much time with a longer runway for something that doesn't have proof of concept or a system of support. So I started learning a whole lot about franchising. I did some consulting for a while, doing some brokering, and then that led me to doing even more development and sales and focus on helping people understand what benefits there are with franchising, and specifically in certain concepts. And so that's kind of my piece of entrepreneurship at this point, is not only for myself, but now giving back and helping to bring other people into the fold, so to speak, to realize the American dream through franchising and becoming a business owner.
Wow.
Good journey.
You know what I love about that, about your journey? I know for me, I've seen a lot of times where a career transition candidate, let's say, will believe in their own minds that they've done so many disjointed things in their background, and they don't really see that common golden thread that ties everything together. But what you did is you took all of your passions and you tied them together with your purpose. So here was your entrepreneurship and your public speaking and your love of golf, and you just tied it all in a big box with a beautiful ribbon on top and packaged it all as a brand, and then brought that whole package into that next season of sustainability. Really incredible journey. And I love how you realize that.
Well, I didn't always realize that. I had a lot of moments, and sometimes months, where I was just going, what am I doing now? What have I been doing? And I think that's part of experiencing the valleys to appreciate the mountaintops, for sure.
Yeah. But there had to have been, and don't let me project here, but part of me, what little I know about you with 2 conversations we've had, there had to be a part of you that had a belief you were going to do something big, that you had some kind of purpose or some other belief that trusted this process in some way. Am I right? Am I wrong? Is there something else that kind of allowed you to, I don't know, trust the process, I guess, that you would be used and your talents would have a positive benefit to others? What was that belief, or what
Mhm.
was that thought process, or what are you thinking about that? I'm really curious.
Well, and I think that definitely, without a question, goes back to my roots, and having a very strong faith, and knowing that that's just kind of always been there, a really strong foundation. And I grew up singing in church. In fact, now I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I think when I was 23, I may have been 22, I went on my first mission trip to Russia, and I did 3 of those actually,
Wow.
and sang and used my gift in orphanages. And of course, I learned a couple songs in Russian, and that was it. But just again, the power of that gift. And, I can't really say I ever had an aha moment, but I just have always been really focused on being the best I could be at what I do. And that just is, I don't say not knowing anything different, but kind of not knowing anything different. I never really got in trouble as a kid because I was too busy doing all kinds of cool stuff, playing the piano and being a cheerleader and raising chickens and, all kinds of cool stuff. So, I just attribute having a really great foundation. Now, my parents, neither of them graduated from college. My dad finished the 8th grade. So literally I was kind of a pioneer in my family too. And I look back at the resources that I had, and I didn't get any scholarships because we didn't know there were scholarships out there. I look back at all the things that my path may have been different due to music or anything else, but it turned out to be pretty cool. And I can look back and say that now. But like I said before, I've had my moments and my months, and my mother has reminded me, what are you doing now? But it's part of the journey for
That's funny.
sure.
That's funny. It's interesting. So often we hear on the show on Where Passion and Purpose Collide that purpose became highlighted after some kind of a major crisis or challenge or obstacle or life event. It somehow bubbled up. In your case, it sounds like even as a youngster, you kind of knew, or consciously or unconsciously, what your gifting was, and that someday, even if you weren't able to define it, what your purpose was, someday you would be able to express it. And it seems much of that comes from the foundation of faith, which I share with you. I'm a missionary's daughter, a pastor's daughter. So I have that similar thing where you just kind of know that God is going to use you. God is going to use you, and you just every day wake up and do the best you can with the gifts you have. So I guess my thought around that is, was there any kind of pivotal moment where the ducks fell in a row for you? Was it when you moved to North Carolina? Was there any pivotal moment, or was it just this path that just kept going?
That's a great question, because often from the outside, people's lives look pretty and shiny and perfect sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's never that way, when you start digging back the layers. And, I'll tell you, there are 2 pieces to that. One was when I moved to North Carolina, I had gotten married, and the marriage didn't work out. And that was a pretty big blow for me, because I've always been an overachiever and a perfectionist, and I'm going to put everything into making this work. And that didn't work. So I think the piece of that was a failure, a big failure that I had to accept personally and work through. And in conjunction with that, I didn't get married until later, a lot later in life. And so, call it a blessing or a curse, but I've lived a single woman's life. And now 2 sides of that is it has allowed me to do amazing things, right? Not having a traditional path. And I've been a gypsy of sorts, and just going whichever way the wind blows to follow my dreams and to cut a new path and be a pioneer. And I've loved that. Most of these stories and the journey that we've talked about today probably would not have happened had I got married at an early age and done a traditional path. The downside of that is, it's not always great to be single, so everything has its pros and cons. And the way I look at it now is my path is for a certain purpose. And I do have a little more time and a little more energy, right, than somebody else might. So, I think those are things that we have to accept as being part of our path. It's not like anybody else's, and that's good and bad, right? So that would be what I would say. I don't know if that's an actual pivotal moment, but it has certainly been something I've had to work through over the years. That's not just something that you go, well, okay, I'm this, or I'm single, or I'm married, or whatever. Those are things you have to accept and embrace and be able to integrate in your day-to-day life and in your path of how you can keep moving forward to make a difference.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Both, I can see Tracy's head going, that this sounds familiar. And I know for me, we're speaking the same language. Sometimes I wake up and I go, oh shoot, I forgot to get married. I built an empire. I lived my purpose. I too am divorced, but there's sometimes I go, how did I get to this stage of my life and forget to get remarried in this case?
Right.
But like you said, this is your path, and there's a certain learning about that. And I think some of that is learning to accept where we are and make full use of the connections and the support and the passion within us to keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a message for wannabe entrepreneurs, folks that have this an idea, a pioneering idea, and want to go about expressing it, do you have any advice for women like yourself that may not have the same level of confidence that you have, or may not have the wonderful foundation that you had that allowed you to get where you are? Any advice, any thoughts that you would pass on?
That's a good question. I think I have a two-part answer. One is educate yourself. Read. I think one of the pieces that helped me so much when I was changing careers was I read biographies of people that had been successful in the field I wanted to go into, and publications to find out who are the movers and the shakers and how do I connect with those individuals, because that's what I did every time I started over. I made a top 10 list of people in that industry, in that community, and I just set out to somehow get a connection with them, a meeting with them. And that means putting your fear and your embarrassment and your uncertainty aside. And sometimes I think looking back, kind of ignorance is bliss, that you don't know that they won't take a meeting with you, and you just have to go out there and do it. I mean, I am proof of that. I never had a single connection, a friend of a friend or anything. I just kind of had to figure that out. But one thing that I will also say, this is a little bit of a plug for the concept that I work for now. M3 Linked is a somewhat newer emerging franchise that is all about breaking down barriers for entrepreneurs and business leaders. And M3 Linked was created to not only provide a forum so that all of those members come with the attitude of giving and the attitude to help others, but we also offer mastermind groups, Shark Tank type events. And these events all take place, we call them experiences, all take place virtually, and then they're coming back in person. And so it really is exciting for me to be aligned with an organization that I'm now working people through the process to become franchisees for M3 Linked, that really encompasses all the pieces of how to support entrepreneurship, whether that's as a franchisee or as a member coming to M3 Linked to be able to connect with those resources. So that was actually a perfect segue, Rebecca, for me to
I know, I did it on purpose early. I was like, we're going to get to M3 at some point.
Yeah. So M3 has been operating in the United States now for over a year, actually succeeding through COVID. We just crossed the border and have sold out all of Toronto. So it's a really exciting time for M3 Linked, which stands for the 3 M's are mastered, mission, and motivated, so that members come to all of the experiences with that shaping why they're there, what they can help others with, and what they need help with. So I'm excited to be working with that organization. The leadership team is super impressive with a lot of experience. And there's just so much excitement that comes out of each one of those experiences, because people come away with, wow, I've got 3 more people that really can help me with my business, can really help me fill in the weak spots. And it's an exciting concept to be part of.
Indeed. Tracy is a master connector. I so often watch just almost miraculously. And it goes back to oftentimes as entrepreneurs, franchisees even, we feel alone, we feel isolated, and we have this entrepreneurial spirit, this pioneering spirit. We have an idea that we have a passion inside of it, a purpose inside of us that we need to express. So to have an organization like M3 that brings those people together, all with a similar heart, which is to offer themselves to another, right? To help another be successful and discover who they are. So it's a platform, it's an organization that does just that. It allows people to come together and fully be themselves at the same time. So I love the M3 concept. Tracy, did you have any other questions for Teresa? Because I am dominating this conversation. I find this crazy, fascinating.
I'm loving every minute of it, but I'm listening, and again, I have to just jump in about Zoracle profiles for a minute, because this is just it's such a perfect place to mention that with Zoracle profiles, we help people to find their ideal fit. Right. And it's amazing to me because we're listening to your story, Teresa. We're hearing about your pioneering and your, love of sustainability and your love of giving back. And I think you're just so philanthropic by nature. And it sounds to me like M3 is such a perfect type of business for you. It's like you found a perfect fit for this stage in your life. Because this organization is sharing information and they're like innovating and bringing people together. And it just sounds like it's such a great fit for you. I just love the whole, and it sounds like a beautiful organization. And of course, you being this wonderful person who loves your fellow mankind.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
What's before we wrap this up, what's the big, bodacious next thing M3 and Teresa Wade would like to see happen besides take over the world, right?
Wow. Well, I work with franchise candidates with M3 linked for them to decide if it's the right opportunity for them. And I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag too much, but we've made it into Canada. We are across the United States, but we're looking at some things across big bodies of water. Not to say too much, but we're in some conversation about that. And certainly an organization that is young and emerging. It's just phenomenal to me, the type of people that are attracted to this whole spirit of collaboration. And one of our taglines is that we're revolutionizing business collaboration. And we recently signed a partnership with James Worthy, who's a big NBA champion, if you follow NBA at all. But he not only is a member, but he's a partner in our Los Angeles M3 linked group. And so to have caliber of individual like him that has had a super successful sports career, is now moving into business, there's just it's such a catalyst for connections on so many different levels. There's not anybody that is in business in any way, shape, or form that can't benefit from what M3 Linked has to offer. And I have a few things that I'm working on that I can't say or talk about too much just yet. Some of them are one of them is a means to an end, and the end being able to write more music again. So we'll just say that it's kind of working on the last bits to the full circle, right, of in the very beginning. So we'll just have to tell folks to stay tuned and check my website
Stay
from
tuned.
time to
We'll
time.
have to have you back. We'll have
Yeah,
to have you back for the big reveal when that happens, right?
yeah, for sure.
For those of you that are listening, we'll put some links in the show notes where you can find some of Teresa's music, learn more about M3 Linked and all that they're up to. We're so excited you came on the show, Teresa, and shared your heart. You are absolutely fascinating, inspiring. I'm just delighted to have had you on the show. So before we go, can you let us know what's the best way for folks to learn more about M3 LinkedIn and to get in contact with you personally?
Yeah, great, great. Well, before I do that, I just want to tell you ladies, thank you for your putting this platform out there and another opportunity for women to learn about the opportunities of entrepreneurship. And certainly I appreciate the scientific background that you both have with your Zoracle. Congratulations on the success of that organization, and keep up this good work for sure. But to reach me, you can always find out kind of a conglomeration of everything that's going on with Teresa Wade at teresawade.com. That's TeresaWade.com. You can email me through that website. And then M3 Linked is M3Linked, LINKED.com. And at that website, you can find out where there are virtual meetings going on in 9 different cities around the country already. And you can also find me that way as well. So I would love to chat with you about that and any way that I can be of help or assistance or talk to folks or help them brainstorm. As I said, I like being a solution finder, so feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Teresa. We've really enjoyed having you.
Thank you so much.
So thank you everyone for joining us today on the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships afford. What is wrong with my mouth today, ladies? Relationships are forged. We'll see you next week for another the Franchise Woman podcast.